There. Okay, looks like people are in. So let me welcome you to, I think this is the 11th webinar so far, and we've transitioned into talking about essay writing, specifically UC essays. And we're up to number 5. We're past the halfway mark, and I've really been enjoying these conversations so much, and I'm just enjoying the preparation and I guess over 10 years of working on essays. It feels really nice to just reflect on the work and be able to take that reflection and concretize it into a methodology, into just a complete, not a complete, but an evolving and more precise way of helping people get their butt in the chair, right? As long as you get your butt in the chair and you have a utensil like a pen or a pencil or a computer, stuff's gonna come out. But it's often hard to get the butt in the chair. And then once you're there, to navigate the road ahead. And so I'm just really enjoying being able to not just do the individual work, but really take that bird's eye view and share that with you. I'm feeling very, very inspired by our students this week as their summers are underway, and feeling a lot of energy from them. We're all hunkered down in this crazy, indeterminate time, and we're all using our life skills of resilience and focus and problem solving, empathically, to see how we can all contribute to the world around us. So one of our students was awarded Rookie of the Year through Red Cross. And I'm so just so pleased and proud to, we started working with a student in 9th grade, and it's just remarkable how, if you are in steady conversation with a teen, how everybody grows in the process. So congrats to that student. That's really awesome. We have a student who's doing an embroidery class through the website Passion Project. If you're a high school student and you have a hobby or a subject area you like, you can propose a workshop or a class online for younger students. And her eyes just lit up, and she showed us the patterns that she's teaching her students. And again, it takes a minute maybe for teens to get the right idea and then to start the execution. But once they get over that hump, there's just so much growth. We also have a student who decided he wanted to use his time well. He's really into programming. He got on Indeed and looked for internships, and he got one. And he's the only high schooler on this team. It's a small startup. He's in team meetings every morning, 7:30. He's doing, okay, I don't know all the lingo in the industry, but he's doing, showing his work on Monday, where everybody is sort of showing them their work and things like that. And it's just remarkable. So feeling very, very energetic about what's going on here. Let's get going here. Welcome. And this is me and Blue Stars, 10 years of really helping students expand, become resilient, savvy, self-possessed, confident young adults, and also very much in collaboration with parents and conversation with parents, deep conversations with parents too, about the world ahead and how best to relate to their child. So it's our team, and you get to meet Stacy today. I'm really excited to be in conversation with Stacy. So excited. Unfortunately, our 10th anniversary celebration is postponed, and that's because wonderful head Jen is still taking her med school exams. They were postponed because of COVID. So I just, want to keep this alive in your imagination because it is definitely going to happen. Definitely. These two people are amazing people, and it's going to be, I think, a very interesting alignment. Okay, a bit of news, then we'll get to Q5, and then you can see the rest of the schedule. I am taking a break for July 4th. I'm staying home. I'm switching gears to work on my own writing. I think some of you know that I have an active writing practice. So bit of a retreat, and then I'm back. Let's do this. Let's go forward together. Topics. Okay, I'm just going to read this first item. Current high school graduates on Wednesday, 3 UC campuses, Berkeley, Riverside, and Santa Cruz became the latest to disclose detailed plans for the fall, joining Davis, Irvine, Merced, and LA, Los Angeles. In general, the campuses will deliver the vast majority of classes virtually, except for classes such as science labs and small discussion seminars that are difficult to provide remotely. East Bay Times from yesterday. So Helen just sent me this morning and I scanned it and pulled out, I felt like, the most information-rich paragraph for you. So the one campus that has not announced its plans yet is Santa Barbara. And according to the article, like, they're not taking calls. So I don't know what they're cooking up. But just to give you a sense of how the discussions are evolving, excuse me. I just wrote in some notes as a placeholder here because, the schools are hunkered down. And my guess is, I don't know if we're going to hear anything that much more definite until after July 4th. That's going to be my hope. But be prepared for alternative models. And obviously there aren't going to be large gatherings. And be prepared for maybe rotations of students on campus. So as Rachel Maddow says, watch this space. I don't know what else to say right now, but I just want to be with you as we're following developments. I think MIT is probably going to be the last school to maintain the SAT requirement. And I did tell you that a few weeks back. I watched, a webinar with Sal Khan and I forget the guy's name, the MIT, the dean of admissions, and MIT really thinks that the SAT or the ACT is a valuable tool. So, but here we are, Harvard, Duke. Georgetown is calling it test flexibility. I don't know if it's that different from being test optional, but they announced that on their website as the name of their program. Harvey Mudd is doing this for 2 years, right? Oh, and out at Princeton too, for not just MIT, sorry, I forgot my own note there. Princeton is also the only school still requiring. So that's where we are with that. And these are my notes from last week. Nothing much has changed, but I still do not think admissions will be easier or harder. Like, I don't think students who, are vying for top schools should give up hope. I also don't think students who are excited about the test optional piece should necessarily think that if they wouldn't have gotten a great score, that they would get into a reach school. There are ways you can see. There are ways you can tell, if a student is really ready for the rigor of the curriculum. So, for example, when I meet a student for the first time, I ask them to send me a writing sample. And that gives me a lot, along with other information, but it gives me when I see a student's writing, I can get a sense of where sort of they're going to land in terms of the competitiveness of a college. If their writing improves, then I think, oh yeah, okay, we can start to bump up a notch. So just the test optional piece It also doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily get easier at the top schools. So we can talk about that later if you want to. Keep juggling, you guys. And if you haven't, secure your test date. That's my advice. Okay, impact on rising. I forgot to put the rising part. Rising freshmen, sophomore, and juniors right now. If you're a rising junior, you'll probably need to wait until November to take the SAT, ACT. So I don't know if there's official priority being given to seniors, and there's a few discussions going on right now in the listservs, but I know that like all of the college counselors in the industry are sort of saying, you know, we really need to give our rising seniors the chance to take their standardized exams. And so our rising juniors should probably wait till November when the seniors, you know, it won't matter for seniors anymore. I'm hoping your personal growth summers are underway, and there's also the webinar on summer planning if you need some ideas. Stay COVID conscious. It's still, I know other things, or stay responsive to the topics of the day. And maybe you want to map things out on a timeline. You can find that in our free college planning workbook. And I'm here at Wisdom already because I really want to get to my discussion with Stacy. I want to get to the challenge essay, right? There's so much to say about the challenge essay. So yeah, I'm going to be giving some writing wisdom for a while because I just, you know, you can't get enough on some level. There's always an extra little piece of insight that, you know, can propel someone, you know, to the chair, to the butt in the chair scenario. Jack London, our own Jack London, Bay Area writing hero. You can't wait for inspiration. You have to go after it with a club. So it's sort of a more male-identified image of what you need to do to cultivate that inspiration. But I really do want to keep hammering away at the idea of, you know, inexperienced writers. And if you're a teen, you're an inexperienced writer because you've only had so many years to practice, you know. So inexperienced writers often think that good writers are just, you know, they're like doing a ballet. They're just inspired and twirling around in their heads, and all that twirl just like flows onto the paper. It's so easy. We're so blessed to be good writers. It's not like that at all. It's not like that at all. The good writers are the ones who got their butt into a chair, and every day, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's mediocre, sometimes it's a big puzzle, and every day, just go back to it. So right now all of our students are free writing. So there's a whole free writing set of exercises before we get to concepting the essays. And our advice to students, and they don't necessarily always follow it because oftentimes we see in the document they've done it all the night before, but our advice is show up every day for a half an hour. Just do it for a half an hour and walk away. Next day, half an hour, walk away. And next thing you know, whatever, 7 days later, 2 weeks later, maybe you're doing it every other day, however this works, you have all this content to work with. So go after it with a club. How do you do that? You get your butt in the chair. Malcolm Gladwell, more contemporary author, thought leader, very, very, very prolific writer. I deal with writer's block by lowering my expectations. So today I also want to tackle the perfectionist aspect of writing and drafting. I think the trouble starts when you sit down to write and imagine that you will achieve something magical and magnificent. And when you don't, panic sets in. The solution is never to sit down and imagine that you will achieve something magical and magnificent. I write a little almost every day, and if it results in 2 or 3, or on a good day, 4 good paragraphs, I consider myself a lucky man. Never try to be the hare. All hail the tortoise. Great Malcolm Gladwell flair. if you know his work, he's got a bunch of books. He also has a wonderful podcast. So I just really want that to sink in. If you're a teen, watching this, screen grab this baby, or go find it, Google it, print it out, put it next to you. I think I told this story to some students, I don't know, but when I was writing my dissertation for my PhD, I wrote my dissertation on Plato. I learned ancient Greek to do it. I am a very ambitious person and a perfectionist. And I knew that if I was going to maintain being a perfectionist, I was never going to finish my dissertation, never. And every day I said to myself, Amy, you are not going to be a perfectionist today. And I did get my butt in the chair every day, or I took breaks, whatever. And I have to tell you, I wrote something I couldn't even have imagined, right? I couldn't have imagined how magical it became when I was doing it, okay? So he says here, the solution is never to sit down and imagine you achieve something magical and magnificent. Don't mythologize yourself and your work as you're sitting there in your imperfections trying to do it. That's not going to help. But saying, how can I get all this stuff that's in my head out onto a screen, onto a pad, so I can survey? Then that's when magic happens. It happens later. So hopefully these kinds of little, nuggets for you guys will help you calm down and write those bad drafts. So that's where we are today. Totally where we are, because I had to go grab Stacy. So give me a minute to find, also today we're in a webinar. We're not in a room anymore. And so what that means is there's a Q&A box, and that's where you can ask me questions. And that's where, hold on, give me a second. I have to get to the participants. So it's a new back end world here. 1 second. Now I have to find Stacy and make her a panelist to grab her. There she is. Excellent.
Got it. How are you, Amy?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I hope everyone else is too.
Cool. Hopefully people are feeling inspired. So
Absolutely.
why don't we move right on to UC Personal Insight question 5. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go. I'm excited to get started.
Let's do it. But of course, as you know, as a counselor at Blue Stars, you know that we are very, very, very systematic. So what we want to do is first go over the tips, the general tips for all UC questions. So let's do that. Let's do that first. Okay. So
awesome. Yeah.
So, and I know we go through this in every webinar, but I feel like repetition is also really good for people. So, because these are new concepts, and when things are new, repetition really helps. So let me just go through these really quickly. So the first is to be specific. Number 2, stay focused on one aspect or one story. Number 3, include a takeaway or a lesson learned. Well, in this prompt, there already is a takeaway that you have to do, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that issue. Number 4, one of my faves, don't get fancy. Number 5, expect to draft multiple revisions so you can work through those initial bad ideas. Number 6, avoid repeating topics and stories. Spread yourself around throughout those 4 essay topics you've chosen. And then, of course, revise for tone. Yeah, so be specific. Don't get fancy. Those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, one of mine is just to remember to stay focused on one aspect or one story.
Stay focused. Also really, really important. And that doesn't mean when you get your butt into the chair, you have to stay focused for those next 30 minutes, write everything out. When you go back and look at it, that's when you stay focused. Then you say, that's off topic. I don't know if I need that. So when we say stay focused, it doesn't mean you have to perform brilliantly every time you sit down to write. So just to clarify that. Cool. All right. So I feel like it's time to get to the prompt. You see personal insight. Question 5. Describe the most significant challenge you have faced and the steps you have taken to overcome this challenge. How? One of those big admissions words, buzzwords. How? How has this challenge affected your academic achievement? All right, so the first thing to say about this prompt is that it's a challenge question. This is a challenge essay that you will be writing.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we would have to do is tackle what is a significant challenge? How should we understand challenge? So I think the best way to do that is to just start with a few examples.
Well, also I think, we want people to understand what is meant by significant, right? Because they didn't just say challenge, they said significant challenge. So I can imagine a teen is wondering, okay, what does that exactly mean? So yeah, so let's get into some examples. Did you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Students use this essay prompt to talk about their issues with time management or an illness, that torn ACL or concussion that they may have gotten playing sports. Or one student of ours talked about her struggles with lupus and how she overcame that, and she's now a graduate of Wharton.
Yes, that's and in Blue Star's Land, that is a legendary essay called the Hot Pot essay. That was a common application essay at the time. These UC essays didn't exist then, but that would have been the perfect essay for this topic. Really, just she took something that was really hard and made it into something. It was really quite charming. So yeah, these are some, go-to topics that we know that lots of students have in their lives. There's also, students have also written about a parent's illness, dealing with that. They've written about a parent losing a job. And, these are real world things that could happen to anyone. And, admissions readers want to know, what have you gone through? What have you been through? How have you handled it? Life is going to happen, and we all need to deal. And they would like to know, how you dealt with that. However, I also want to say that while this is a very good opportunity for these kinds of stories, and we work on these kinds of stories a lot, a significant challenge, right? Because we start off by talking about what does significant mean, right? A significant challenge doesn't necessarily have to be so heady, right?
That's right. You don't have to interpret significant as monumental. It can be about overcoming a phobia with math or English, or even learning how to speak English while you're in high school. So the experience doesn't have to be life-threatening to be considered a significant challenge.
Exactly. For example, you could also write about dealing with something like bigotry. That would be an excellent topic. Dealing with sexism in your school, that would be another topic. We've had students, robotics, female robotics students who have talked about their adventures in robotics land, and some of them have started their own teams and things like that. So, and even if everyone around you is experiencing bigotry, and so you don't necessarily think it's unique to you, this is a great topic for this essay question, because you experience it personally. You experience it uniquely. You know, last week I quoted Tori Amos about your story and the fact that she wishes that when she were a teen, someone would have told her, your story is unique. Dig into your story, believe in that. So even if it's something that you think is commonly happening to other people, if it's something that is a significant challenge to you, you should write about it. You could also write about your own bigotry or owning up to your own mistake or regret in this essay. And we've had, you know, not too many, but a few students have owned up to things. And that's been a really significant challenge for them. And it's also just totally freed them. So that would be a winning approach to this essay.
Yeah, that's true, Amy. Having experience as an admissions officer, I know that they appreciate when students take responsibility for their mistakes,
Yeah.
apologize, and then move forward with positive intentions that show that they're becoming better learners. That's
Yeah.
an excellent essay to write about for this essay prompt.
Yeah. And, you know, I just want to note that this is an interesting space where there tends to be a tension with parents, because parents basically want their children to highlight all the positive things. And so when I meet parents, and my child did this, and my child did this, and my child did this, and I said, but your child went through a really tough experience that needs to be expressed here. And so often there's a tension where the parent doesn't want the child to talk about something the parent thinks will embarrass the child. And we have to go really work with the family unit to say, no, being vulnerable, owning up to a mistake is exactly, exactly that level of personal and emotional honesty is exactly what they're looking for. So this is an issue where, and I think we've talked about this before, you know, and where it's not helpful for parents to be very involved in essay writing. Maybe to ask how it's going, maybe explore an idea, maybe, but parents are very attached to outcomes, and they are very attached to a certain kind of presentation that is not necessarily in sync with what Harvard or Berkeley, we're talking about UC, is looking for, you know, so. I just want to elaborate a little bit on that point, because, and thank you for, you know, sharing on your end, you know, as an admissions officer, how much you appreciate that, you know.
Absolutely.
So let's switch gears for a second here and talk about the annoying part of this essay prompt, right? This is not just any old challenge essay.
Right. It is specifically aligned to or angled towards affecting your academic achievement. So the challenge needs to be tied to that in order for it to work.
So often we get into a whole challenge story with a student and we're like, what's the academic achievement piece? We didn't bring it back to the prompt, right? Right? So then what do we have to do? What do we have to do at that point, Stacy?
Well, we have to bring them back to that essay prompt and make sure that we're all on the same page and moving in that direction. But if you're racking your brain trying to figure out if it aligns and you just can't make it work, then this isn't the topic for you to write about. So if you can't spin it to be about a story about affecting academic achievement, then you should choose a different essay topic. You can apply that challenge somewhere else.
Pretty much any other, except for question 6, where it's talking about your academic interests, you can take a challenge story and plug it in to the other topics. So don't get upset if you can't bring it back to academic achievement. Don't feel like you can't necessarily use this essay. This topic just might be for a different topic. So I know in our webinars, we keep focusing on one topic at a time, but there are 8 and you can write on 4. So it's really quite luxurious. Okay. Well, I think we're ready for our general tips at this point.
Awesome.
You know, just had our nice meandering conversation about them. So here we are, just to sum up what we've been talking about. Make sure you've defined your significant challenge clearly. And note that significant doesn't have to mean monumental to outsiders. Focus on its significance to you. Tie your challenge story to academic achievement. You can define academic achievement broadly. We'll get to that too. Don't forget about the steps you've taken, the how. We didn't talk a lot about that in our conversation because Laura and Helen and I talked about that in other webinars.
Yes.
Okay, this is an essay where you really can show your vulnerability. Okay. Don't forget to structure a challenge or hardship essay in terms of the triumph sandwich. I think I called it the happy sandwich last week, but I've renamed it. I have officially dubbed it the triumph sandwich, which I believe is my solid gold tip. Solid gold should be all caps. Actually, I did not punctuate that correctly. Tell us about the triumph sandwich, Stacy, the solid gold tip. What is the triumph sandwich?
Absolutely. I love the visual that the triumph sandwich gives because it helps students to remember what they're actually doing. So you start at the summit of your challenge, and then you get past that challenge. In the middle part, you dig down into the nitty-gritty to deal with the unpleasant things. And then you rise back up to the top and tell how you accomplish what you did, and then end on a triumphant note. So the triumph sandwich. It's a great visual to help students remember that process.
Right, so you want to start on a happy note and dig down. It's almost like goes like this. It's the opposite, right? So you start at the happy place. You've already been past the challenge. It wasn't always like this. Oh, this was the challenge. It was really hard, really hard, really hard, really hard. And then how I did it, how I got back up, how I got back up, how I got back up. I'm here with my academic achievement, right? So it's almost like a you type thing, you know? And I feel like we have notes somewhere else about this. I don't remember, but I'll just I did dramatize something for myself last night I'd like to share with everyone. But this happens every year, so everyone knows. So the editors work, and then a month before the essays are due, I get into them and start looking at them. And invariably, somebody misses a beat, and I get an essay that starts like, my life sucked, and it sucks again. And then, oh my God, it got worse. And worse, and it was terrible. Oh my God, I'm dying as a reader. I cannot hang on to this essay anymore. And then all of a sudden I got an A in the class. That's the essay. That's what the reading experience is like. It's like, this was terrible, it 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 was terrible. Now I'm a reader, I'm like, oh my God, I'm exhausted, I need a break. I can't even get to the end. And this is just about reading conventions, you know, and teens might think, why can't I just tell my story the way it naturally comes out, right? What is wrong with that, you know? Well, and this is, as you move from a teen to becoming an adult, you become more aware of the outside world. You know, we're not all the star of our own movie. We have to translate our story in a way to someone else, in a way that other person can receive it.
Right.
So the triumph sandwich is a way to prepare your reader for a hard story, right? When you have bad news to tell someone, if you got some EQ, right? You're not going to go in and be like, right? You're going to be like, how are you today?
Mm-hmm.
I have something to tell you, right? You prepare people.
That's right.
That's what the triumph sandwich is all about. So, and the triumph sandwich is about basically you want to be able to tell a hard story, but what happens, the tricky part of being vulnerable in an essay is is giving the impression that you're going to fall apart when you get to college. And that's why this structure just takes care of that, because it shows how you overcame something and where you've landed. So that's why I just love it. It's such a solid gold tip, because if you follow the structure, your essay won't have sort of a downer kind of effect. And
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
the student who we worked on the lupus essay, this was a big preoccupation of hers, because it was a really, and we started out, she said, I don't want the reader coming away feeling bad for me, and we followed the general writing tips and started early and could revise. So there you go. All right, I think it's time for real concrete examples. So let's get back to the prompt.
All right.
So let's just have the prompt up, and why don't you give us our first example?
Absolutely. So student A is John. So John didn't actually apply to a UC school, but his example is a really good one to show what we're discussing here. So John had a GPA below 3.0. He was struggling with time management, and it affected almost everything, his academics, sports, and scouting. So John wrote about those challenges and how he overcame them. And ultimately, he wrote about finding time management skills that worked for him and his persistence. And because of that, he got the highest GPA of his high school career of a 3.5. So through that process, he went from being a student who doubted that he would be accepted to any college to becoming a student who was accepted to several colleges just by, amongst other things, writing in his essays using that triumph sandwich process. So John was a real success story.
He got some scholarship money too.
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting story. And I do really remember the transformational process that he went through, and we
Yeah.
first met him, and
Mm-hmm.
he was all over the place, and then he's leading his Boy Scout troop, and just excelling academically. So
Yes.
time management, it's a great opportunity to talk about how you've worked on your time management skills, and that is something colleges definitely want to know about. So it doesn't sound like the typical hero's journey, and we've been also in our conversation, Stacy, been likening the challenge essay to the hero's journey.
Right.
Similar
Mm-hmm.
concept, but I think that really mastering time management is heroic in a world of distraction. So
Absolutely.
very worthy topic. So student B, I'd like to talk about her essay, which dealt with transferring schools in the middle of high school. So when she was a younger high school student, this student went to a small, elite, private high school. She loved the tight-knit community, but she felt very overwhelmed academically. And she went through a process discussing this with her parents and decided to leave that school and go to a large public high school that wasn't as challenging academically. And at first it was a little rocky at first, but she found mentors. She started a social justice club. She really came alive in this new environment. So she wrote about that process. First, how she made the significant challenge was leaving her beloved small knit community that she felt comfortable in, but barely in other ways, not so much, joining a new, larger community all by herself, not necessarily having friends, navigating that, and then really taking charge of her studies. And so she talked about that whole experience, and her upshot was this. I'm going to quote this. She writes, "I learned to take responsibility for my education."
That's awesome.
I learned to take responsibility for my education, right? Gold,
Mm-hmm.
gold, admissions gold, right there.
Absolutely.
And this is one of the ways in which, you know, she's talking about how it affected her academic achievement, but it's a little unconventional in that it's about the taking responsibility part. So she didn't have to say, I got this grade and that grade. That's her upshot. And that's the one way in which you can, you know, unconventionally talk about academic achievement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's student B.
All right. So student C is Carol. So Carol transforms a traumatic experience of sexual assault into an opportunity to facilitate discussion in health class about rape culture. Very different topic from what the other two that we've given so far. I'm going to read what she wrote. I worked with our teacher to facilitate a classroom discussion evaluating the impact of language on our culture. For the first time, I fearlessly stood in front of my peers and said, I survived sexual assault. So Carol took a lot of action. She joined a task force to advocate for sex education in schools. She wrote a letter of intent and collected hundreds of signatures and presented it to the board. She confronted rape culture and also negative language and talk and how it impacts us, and turned that around and made a connection between facing all of these challenges and her academic success. So by confronting all of those things, she was able to, you know, do better academically and find her voice. And Carol is now a student at UCLA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, student I'm very, very, very close with,
Mm-hmm.
and was a very close conversation as she was in high school going through these difficult experiences. And, you know, we chose, Stacy and I chose to talk about this essay, and admittedly, it's very sensitive material because this is a real experience.
Right.
And often our impulse is to, you know, shove those under the rug and then write about the shiny, happy things. But look, this student got it. She's at UCLA. They loved her story,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, as we said, not, okay, your significant challenge, it doesn't have to be something so heady, but also don't be afraid if it feels like it might be a little raw. Don't be afraid if you're turning it into an academic achievement. And she, you know, she really contributed to the curriculum of her health class. That's
Mm-hmm.
another unconventional way of talking about an academic achievement, you know.
Absolutely.
I just want to raise this as another quickie example, and then I have one more sort of more substantial example. We had a student, I don't know if she wrote on this topic for UC. She wrote on it for other things, but we had a student who, her brother is on the spectrum. And so she's been living with that, you know, dealing with that in her family. And then in her high school health class, she found that the curriculum on autism and learning differences was completely disrespectful. And she wrote a letter to the to the principal, and they changed the curriculum to make it more sensitive. So anyway,
That's awesome.
another off the cuff example. But one last example, our student D, I think is a sort of a fun example. And basically, uh, this student, she, for one of her summer activities a few years back, she was working for a lawyer, and this lawyer was just a volatile, crazy lady. And she would just fly off the handle. And one time, this student sent another lawyer on an errand the lawyer didn't have to go on. And the boss lady freaked out on the student, high school intern, and threw her out of the office. It was a Friday afternoon. She was totally thrown by this, but she talked to her father about it. Her father said, well, you have to go to work on Monday. You know, we all have to deal with the boss who isn't that great. So I'm driving you. And she went back on Monday, and she was just really, really determined to be more precise and do a better job. And she kept that internship this summer. And so I'm just going to read a little bit from what she wrote in her essay. And she wrote, in spite of a couple of speed bumps, I truly learned a lot from this internship about law, about the working world. But most important, I learned that I have a strong spirit and I'm willing to improve myself. These lessons are applicable to my academic career in particular, the double and triple checking of everything I turn in. Because of this, I make fewer errors on essays and tests. That's her academic achievement.
Yes.
She's more precise in the internship, and then she makes fewer errors.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
right. So hopefully our audience is getting a feel for the diverse ways in which you really can tackle this question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to move on to matching the examples to the tips. Here are the examples. So going back to student A with our time management, student A overcame his time management problems and began excelling in school. Back to the academic achievement. Student B overcame the transition of switching high schools and took more responsibility for her education. Student C overcame the difficulty of feeling silenced by society and introduced new topics in her health class. Student D overcame a scary boss and learned to be more precise at her internship and in her schoolwork. So there we are. There we are. Put us in gallery view, and I'm now looking at chat. Cool. All right, I've got some questions.
Mm-hmm.
We've got new breaking news. Thank you. Thanks. And that's Princeton will not require the SAT. Oh, so I was inaccurate in my presentation today. Okay, all right. So the breaking news from Wall Street Journal, I'll just read it. Princeton, Northwestern are the latest not to require the SAT, ACT. So all 8 Ivies are test optional. MIT and University of Michigan remain holdouts. Thank you for that news. Excellent. All right. Okay, can this be a multiple year? So, okay. My son had a not so great start in 9th grade, gradually improved the grades in 10th and better in 11th. Okay. Yes, so yes, academic achievement, it could be over years. It does not necessarily, like for example, with the student who switched schools, right? So it was basically her academic achievement over like junior, half of senior year. But those are, those sorts of basically improving over years and explaining that improvement through a significant challenge. Sure. I don't know, do you have any to add to that, Stacy?
Yeah, I would add to that colleges look for that upswing because it shows a consistency in commitment and dedication, and that they view their education as important. So it looks really good to keep going up. Whereas if you did great in ninth grade and 10th grade and then went down in 11th and 12th, it's a quite different picture. So that upward progression looks a lot better, more hopeful.
Right. So academic achievement can definitely be over time throughout a high school career, most definitely. And it could be like, oh, this is a good one. And I think the only reason why I haven't mentioned this topic is I personally find it a little, I'm sorry, buddy, but I just personally find it boring. But video games, that has been a significant challenge for many teens. And so they have to write about getting over video games and their grades. I mean, it's a cause effect. It's like a direct cause scenario. So, but we try to work with our students to really curb the video games so we don't have that issue. But that would be, that could be. And if you have really struggled with that, you should write, and you've overcome it, you should write about it. Yeah. Let me read this. My son took American history and he had an interesting experience. The teacher has a quite opposite political view. He was tough on grading. Initially, my son had a hard time both in class due to the teacher's point of view, but gradually they got along well, and my son got an A and credit. In a COVID, this is a great story. Also likes the teacher, even with the, okay. And so the last, would something political be too sensitive in essay writing? Absolutely not. It depends on how you do it. Do you want to take a crack, Stacy?
Yeah, I think that any story that is meaningful to the student, that can follow the format of whatever essay they're writing, is a good topic to write about. It shows their individuality. It can show courage. It shows position. And like Dr. M is saying, it's like, how do you write it? How do you express those thoughts clearly and factually in this case? And so I think it's a great topic as well to write about.
So I also I want to say I don't think students should shy away from the political in their essays. Otherwise they look oblivious. And I talk about this a lot with our students, because we have a lot of middle class students, and like they're tutoring and doing research. I'm like, what about the world? Hello, how about COVID? Anti-racism, immigrate, because, and I think, my prediction right now is it's only going to get a little harder for middle class students, because top schools, they'll admit rich students for obvious reasons, and then they're looking for your under-resourced, underrepresented students. And you see soon too, we'll be using affirmative action again, right? So unfortunately, our middle and upper middle class students are, I like to say, like I'm a Gen Xer, the lost generation. No one cares about Gen Xers. But so you have, your middle class students who, you really want to show like you're engaged in the world, you're ready to take it on. You don't want to just be that picture perfect, high achieving student. I don't think that'll grab the attention. So, but I do also want to say this story the question that's being asked about the student who had differing views from the teacher and how they ended up in dialogue and his grade got better and now they're friends. Gold.
Absolutely.
Gold. What are your thoughts, Stacy?
Based on your comment, I think this student is already prepared to be in a college classroom setting and having a valuable debate about real life topics and real life differences. And that's where the conversation needs to start. It's like, what are those differences and how do you talk about them in a way that someone who has an opposite opinion than you do, how can they hear you and understand you? And it sounds like that happened here with these two different political views, where they were each able to share their side and then come to some understanding and then build a relationship based on that. And that is so crucial in today's time. So I think this topic is, like you say, it's golden.
It really is. I mean,
Mhm.
because, and we always talk about, show, don't tell. I haven't used that, lately, because all of our webinars are based on showing, not telling, right?
Right.
But this story would show this student to be probably like a model, campus citizen,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and especially, I didn't even turn on the news this morning because I know it's just going to be total mayhem with the Tulsa, Oklahoma thing and all of the nervous systems being fired up in our culture, the firing away. And so if a student writes, oh, there were differences and we talked about them, and that's a whole different headspace and
Absolutely. A
very,
real change maker. A real change maker.
that's a good question.
Kudos to this student.
Yeah, and the teacher.
Absolutely.
And the teacher. And
Yeah.
kudos to teachers. Why not just give a plug to teachers, because teachers rock. Any other questions? I don't think I missed any. That was a good one. That was a good
Mhm.
case study. Yeah, we'll take case
Absolutely.
studies, any webinar, no problems. They're fun to dissect and talk about. So, okay, well,
Mhm.
I think we're in good shape. And I
Okay.
think we've hopefully given people lots of different ideas for UC Personal Insight question 5.
Oh,
And
please
thanks,
see Q&A. We have a message that says, please see Q&A. Okay.
thanks. How does the UC Regents endorsement restoring for reaction affect the college admissions process going forward? Well, I don't know off the bat, but my guess is they're going to be admitting more Latinx students. I had to go look at all of the stats again, but I don't want to say any stats off the top of my head. But I think there'll be a shift in population. So I haven't read anything, and when I do, I will most totally share it. And there's just so much going on, but I do think it will shift the ratios of things
Mhm.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what else to say. I don't like to speak out of hand, So so I don't want to speculate too much, and but I will definitely provide more information.
Mhm. Another Blue Stars technique, right? Be informed.
Yeah, exactly. Be prepared, be informed, so
And then respond.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we'll definitely be in conversation with y'all about this, and who knows what's happening with the scores. It's a time of, as I said, I think it was in the last webinar, and I quoted Rebecca Solnit quoting somebody else, everything is falling apart and coming together at the same time. And so as long as we're all really actively participating in it, just like the student with his history teacher, this also is not permanent. That's what Buddhism tells us, right?
Mhm.
So we just have to be prepared, for all sorts of openings. So thanks so much, Stacy, and thank you all
Thank
for attending
you.
this week. And I will definitely see you next week.
Awesome.
Have a
See you
great one.
soon.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.